one desirable feature to counteract.
I would.
Okay.
Let me ask the same question to everybody else out there in this forum. Anybody else has any other suggestions for Andy?
I'm looking for the button to raise my hand, but can I do it the old-fashioned way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Still works. So I think, having, I don't want to misuse this term of layered security, but I think it's applicable, that there are differences with a device in terms of what you can do, like, think about, like a PC, administrator access versus user access. User access to a device, one has to be very thoughtful about what restrictions or controls there are. It could be unsafe if you make it too difficult to access the device in certain settings. And we see that for a lot of reasons. Perhaps people are, sterile, scrubbed, doing procedures. They need to have access, or it's a shared resource in a procedure room. But that doesn't mean that those people should be able to have administrative access and change something at a different level. So I think understanding the use cases, the use environment, and also, like everything else, what are the hazardous situations that would occur if it's overly constrained is important. And understanding also is if it's connected to other things, could it serve as an entry point, of course, to the network. I think the other thing that's really a challenge today is monitoring devices on the network to understand their level of software or patch level or operating system level, the notion of the software bill of materials, and information like that. Because the management of these devices, it's one thing to talk about whether they're secure on Tuesday morning, but are they secure on Thursday afternoon? It's maintaining them that's so difficult. So manufacturers really, the more they think about that, the entire software lifecycle, product lifecycle, and maintenance, and using best practices and following FDA pre- and post-market guidance would help a lot.
Yeah,
that's all I have for you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I really like that this point that Julian raised here. That what we say, principle of least privilege. You only give the privilege that is absolutely necessary to get the job done, and definitely usability is a issue. Security versus usability. You want to make something very secure, but at the cost of the usability is not users. And then the updates that the other example given, that whether the device is as secure as it is on a Tuesday versus Wednesday, because of those patches. Many of the time they are not discovered until new attack happens. Then there is a zero-day attack and things like that. So, and how frequently should we just keep updating? And can that be used as a channel to also propagate malwares? You're thinking it's a security update, but it's the attackers took over and sending you the malwares.
Also, the deployment environment, I guess these days, we think about a lot. Even medical devices, we may have thought they'd be deployed in this more controlled or secured environment in a healthcare system, but they may be deployed at home or elsewhere. And so now that also changes the equation.
And I think, Dr. Goldman, the point you raised in your presentation, context, right? It's paramount in every situation, right? And one more thing I'll add to it is, besides least privilege, minimum use. We live by that on a constant basis in our world, right? In the sense, authorization, who's going to use the device, etc. So I think there are a lot of ways we can look at this, and it's very layered, and you can really build a foolproof sort of system, but not to the point where it's not functional, as Dr. Goldman. So if you do that, then you're not serving the purpose at all. So.
Good point. Thank you.
I also want to emphasize that, look at how IT systems and other ecosystems are managed. They are designed to be network managed. They're designed to allow for all of the different products on the market that scan networks and test the networks and do all the testing and monitor and log, right? All of the IT equipment does that. We wouldn't buy it if it didn't work that way. And now the medical devices, don't do that for the most part. You know, they kind of come along kicking and screaming. We can't monitor them. We can't track all of that. So that's part of the core problem. So trying to somehow make them different and special instead of connecting like our IT infrastructure does is part of the problem. So I think the more we shift towards standardizing that, it'll allow us to monitor the ecosystem and apply the tools and technologies that are being used elsewhere, where there's a lot of expertise and refinement already.
So anybody else has anything more to add to this, or should we move on to our next topic?
I have a thought or a question.
Please.
So as we're talking about this, I know we're talking about software. I tend to worry about the firmware level too. I was around when I think we created firmware. Oh boy. So as we're talking about these areas, do we think about a defense in depth strategy where it's at the hardware level, the firmware level, the software level, the service level? What should the scope be that we think about? And it's not going to be easy to tackle everything at the same time, but it is, a system level view. Do we think all of those are important?
Yes, I would think so. Definitely, I think Dr. Goldman also touched on that a little bit. That layered security and you said security in depth. Definitely, that's because the systems are so complex. It's just you can rely on just one layer or two layer, and as at least you can minimize as if you have protection at every layer. So if some of the layer fails, you at least have something at the layer that you have protections. Yeah.
I thought you were throwing a curveball, which was, what if you're talking about embedded, embedded OSs, which are typical with medical devices. That's part of the problem with managing them. I'd like to hear, what the proposed solution is there, because those are not going away. They serve an important purpose, and that's part of the challenge is managing those.
Totally agree, but that's what I wanted to get on the table.
Yeah, I think that's true. That they're always behind the 8 ball when it comes to being current, right? And the challenge is you just can't keep on changing these devices at will, because it's expenditure, it's cost, not only from that perspective, from a user perspective too. So I think there are a lot of areas we've got to consider when we come into this. I think, is it Paventon, do you have a question or comment?
I just want to add the internet connected medical devices, especially the defense in depth, just the last speaker highlighted, like how do we ensure that the devices can be updated with the latest patches, and because vendor independent mechanism is required if you want to patch the device with the latest security updates and things like that. So especially what can be achieved similar to the internet connected network elements, similar to that if you want to ensure in the healthcare. So definitely we need standards and vendor independent approach, interoperable mechanism of firmware update over the internet. So those are some of the things which are happening, especially in IETF, where like IoT software update, there is a new standard that is coming up. So definitely those were some of the items which would be good to look at for this group. Yeah, that's my input. Yeah, thank you.
That's an excellent suggestion. So.
Can you just put the standard you were talking about into the chat? We didn't get it in the notes.
It's IoT. Yeah, IoT's. Yeah, so probably I'll put it in the chat. Yeah.
That would be great, just so we get it right. Thank you. Very good point.
So just one more thing I'll add to it, and that's me being me, right? And Florence knows that, is workflow. It's also the context of workflow, how the device is being used comes into play too. I think we look at security. So that's one thing which we tend to overlook, which I think we should not, just as a comment. And, before we move on, Mohd, Dr. Goldman, Florence, any other areas to consider?
Well, I think that's a lot already, but
Okay.
Yeah.
It's never ending, so we'll move on to the next topic.
yeah, and well, I'll throw one out there. So when we have more AR and VR, what's that all about? You know, so I remember when, you know, internet and IoT was happening and people were like, oh, you know, we need one protocol. I'm like, well, guess again, you know, that's not the way the world is now, right? So as we get into these new forms of communication and new technologies, I don't know what that's going to mean, you know, but you know, as an aerospace engineer, I say we have a heads down display, you know, your altimeter, and then you have a heads up display, like, wow, look at the tornado over there, right? You know, and so I think, you know, there's an opportunity to look out there as we come up with suggestions now to think about, well, where is this going? You know, because I know like one of our friends at Medtronic is talking about, as you know, on some of the calls, Parthiv, in the standards working group, about more implementation of AR and VR and brain interfaces and neuro interfaces and all sorts of stuff going on. And I think that's going to even add on top of this. So we have to get started and then consider those.
So perfect segue into the next topic. It would have been better. So the next topic is, what cybersecurity risks or threats are you most concerned about when using medical devices? Was the first one. The second one is take the same thing, but let's look at the future. And the question then becomes, what worries you most when it comes to security of medical devices in the future? And you just touched upon it. And this is something which can be quite scary, I think, because technology moves at a breakneck speed, and we are really just coming towards the new frontiers of technology and using those in the medical world, in our other world, so in healthcare. So what would your concerns be?
I'm really worried with all the connectivity about user and device authentication. We really haven't figured out, we have figured out identity and access management for humans into systems. You know, we know who you are, there's a password, there's code, there's multi-factor authentication. I lost my phone now, what do I do, right? But then there's humans to the devices that the patient is wearing. And then the device is talking to each other. How can I trust this device? And then there's the credentials of the humans, right? Like, should they be getting into this? Are they still affiliated with that hospital? You know, does that, you know, caregiver still work for that visiting nurse service? You know, so I think there are these complexities as we're more connected. And we have, like, you know, digital Sherpas that are going to be trying to help these people. I don't know. That's another issue. You know, how are they going to deal with it? We have people that can't even get a COVID vaccine because they can't figure out how to log on to the site and get an appointment. And so how are they going to deal with some of this digital stuff? So those are some of the things that keep me up at night.
I think you raise a great point, which a lot of people might not think about, is the inequality cost, right? In terms of when you look at the world we live in, and I've traveled all over the US, practically every state, it's not the same. Midwest, rural areas, it's very, very different. And as Dr. Goldman said, I've seen that. No ICUs, 2 ICU beds. It's completely different when it comes to treating patients out there, right? So it's a different challenge. And I think that challenge is also here. I think, so from, at least I'll put a couple of things out there. One is education, helping people manage that and learn how to deal with it, or how to access it. But the second is, which even bothers most, is artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? When you factor those two things in, how does that equation change? And my big concern is will the machine, or whatever the agent is for artificial intelligence, can it change what your readings might be? Or maybe just algorithmically, it might have an error in there, right? Which makes it a different story. So that's where my concern is. And who polices that? Who manages that? And that's something which one area, right? In the sense, and if we do that, then how does it impact delivery of healthcare? Does it slow you down? Does it add layers of, so these are the areas from my thoughts. So I'd love to hear what people have to say about those, or any other thoughts. So.
Yeah, I would just add that now with all those network of things everywhere, and now there wouldn't be any divide between smart home and smart medical space or smart city when that gets in there. So it's just, and the users who have their own devices and they get some of the observations of their health, and then they want to push that information to providers. So smart home and whatever the security and privacy controls we have in smart home, that could be an entry point to get into the provider's space where they have this smart medical space. So with all those kind of things, it's a nightmare. That's only I can think of.
I'm not saying this in jest, you're right. It's Siri, Alexa, and Google Talk, right?
Yeah, the digital assistants used in different places, even in medical space or in smart home space. Yeah.
So, and again, it's the other area which I do think is telemedicine in the future, which will gather momentum, right? Other is robotics and surgery and remote surgery, things like that. So I think it's going to go, it's going to expand quite a bit in terms of what we can do and what new challenges that would bring to us to be sure that we can deliver the services and diagnose appropriately without error, on our part and the machine part, right, the systems part, right? So I think those are real challenges which we have faced. I think as we move ahead, we'll start uncovering more and more as we get more entrenched in those areas. Just tip of the iceberg right now, but I'd love to hear what Dr. Goldman has to say about it, being well versed in this area and dealing with it more than we do on a day-to-day basis. So.
Well, these are all good. They're all valid. I think the question was kind of what keeps you up at night, or what do you worry about the most? I worry about two things. The one thing is that we have a ecosystem, a medical technology ecosystem that is just not built to be managed, for security and privacy. The health IT system, sure, that's much more modern, but all the myriad of the medical Internet of Things just isn't. So that's one thing that keeps me awake, because every time there's a bulletin like the ones I discussed today, I'm immediately calling meetings and with internally and addressing this. Where are these devices located, and are they vulnerable? What's their software version? Every one of these things, you have to touch the devices and scratch your head and figure out what the issues are. How are they configured? None of this is easily visible, and it's getting better, but it's still fundamentally a problem. But the other thing that keeps me up is that, we will see some really amazing new technology that gets deployed that will be life-saving. Remember, preventable medical errors are still the third or fourth leading cause of death in the US. Death in hospitals, preventable medical errors in hospitals are before COVID, it was, whatever. So now one lower, at least the preventable. So we still have a problem we haven't solved. And so my real fear is that we'll have some fantastic demonstration environment or technologies in hospitals that are life-saving and that can make a huge impact. And they'll use these advanced technologies, and then there'll be an attack, there'll be a problem. It won't be, that'll take the system down and may cause patient injury, and it'll set technology back by another 20 years. So I'm really concerned about that. And it's what's inhibiting a lot of the innovation. People are just afraid of sticking their neck out and being the ones to blame for introducing a vulnerability into a health system through their technology. So I'm worried about the pace of innovation and being inhibited by these concerns about cybersecurity.
So I think you bring up a great point, but we also don't do a great job of mitigating these risks. By that, what I mean is, what you just touch base upon where the devices are, what level they're running at, right? From an asset management perspective, we at times fall short, or critical data parts, etc. Right? I mean, we just don't manage those well at times. Dr. Goldman, you're on mute.
I was testing the mute feature. Is it working?
It's
No,
working.
Thank you. That's working. Thank you. It's, again, the IT, departments can readily determine how many laptops are online and where they patched, and the status of all the software license usage. We just can't determine those things with most of the medical devices. We have a basic problem of inventory management and status information, but it stems from, it's the same root cause of devices not being built and intended to be connected on the network, interoperable, and able to be monitored. So it's a fixable problem, but it's difficult. And we can't fix it as end users. None of us can fix it from the bottom up. It has to be fixed at an industry-wide or sector-wide solution, which is where IEEE comes in.
So then for vital sign monitors, for example, or devices that can be moved from room to room, would it make sense to have something to just find my device where I am, where it's?
I mean, that's one of the many things that are, can be useful. Here's the problem with, locating devices is an issue, but let's just say things that are actually on the network, physically connected with wires. We can't probe those and determine the number and the software version and the software bill of materials and all of that. There are third-party technologies now that are medical device cybersecurity appliances that are helping to do that. But they're kind of backing into the solution by looking at the communication protocols and trying to decipher which product is connected and which messages are being passed. That's totally different than the way we do that with IT infrastructure. It's the wrong way. It's necessary, but it's it's a dead end.
That's right. Actually, I'm dealing with a couple of them, one specifically, and it's reverse engineering, for lack of a better term, because you're collecting data and create, right, a database, as opposed to the device being able, standards. I should be able to give you X, Y, and Z right off the bat. It says this is where I am, and this is where.
Right.
So.
Right.
The other topic from medical devices perspective also is, when, again, for the future, we've touched on a few things. Do you look at devices being self-directed, being able to perform certain tasks based upon how, within certain confines, for example? Do you see that happening, or that's just too far-fetched?
Yeah, you're talking about autonomy. Autonomy is getting, it's getting a buzzword, and everybody wants autonomy. So device autonomy, system autonomy, network autonomy. So we're working on many different of those, but we are right now thinking all the good things of autonomy that makes people's life easier. They don't need to worry about all those things. But this is, as you say, that this is a significant risk, because nobody is there to vouch or validate or make sure that, what could go wrong. It is unforeseeable when the device gets the autonomy, and especially when the things are in the network, when it is connected to other devices, and if it's just somebody needs to, that makes the vulnerability more severe. It just needs to get into one autonomous device, and then you basically take over of the network or the device or network of devices.
I think that's a very good point. I'm going to turn this on to all our participants out there. If you can jump in here, please, and let us know. I mean, I'm sure you face these adversities, you face these challenges out there. So really would like your input in these areas. So if we could turn that over to you guys, and if you could please jump in here and participate, would be absolutely wonderful. So who wants to take the first point out here and open up about what they think and where we should be going?
Long pause.
Yeah.
This is Martin Resner. So I think part of the issue also here is that honestly, we don't necessarily have a trust framework in place to be able to deal with these kind of new technologies and new changes. For example, IoT. How do we actually know? How do we put together a framework, a flexible enough trust framework to enable these devices to be added and subtracted from the network and be trusted at the same time? So I think that's kind of what keeps me up with when we as Philips add new devices into the hospitals. How do hospitals honestly trust these devices, and then when they get removed, how do we make sure that they are no longer on the trusted list? So I think part of that, and then you can extend that into remote capabilities as well, right? Because then you can also talk about trust of the user on the other side of a trusted device. So I think ultimately we have to have a flexible enough framework to be able to have these trusts established across the different systems. So that's kind of what keeps me up at night as well.
Excellent point. I'm going to ask Florence to jump in here, because thanks to her, we are moving the right direction from medical frameworks and where we need to go. So Florence, any thoughts on this? Is she there? I think she might have stepped out. No, she's not. So anybody else wants to jump in here and share their thoughts and add to what Martin just said?
I would like to add, if I could, to the 2 points that were just made. One of them has to do with autonomy. I think it's useful to differentiate between a standalone, independent autonomous system with its own sensors and actuators, processing, and so forth, and those that require, those are part of a distributed system, maybe distributed sensors, actuators, which, and we can see the benefits and shortcomings, or maybe there's only one way to get some of those done. But certainly when we look at, smart traffic systems, smart cars, there's a combination of levels of communication with environmental information being communicated and traffic signal information. And all of these could then be inputs to also undermine the system. So I think, going back to a platform-based approach and leveraging information from the environment, probably adds more complexity in terms of the security and reliability of an autonomous system versus, a Roomba that is kind of self-contained for the most part, or a Da Vinci robot if it becomes autonomous. So that was one point I wanted to make. And the other, to kind of build on Martin's point, is an interesting issue that we're seeing today with programming of infusion pumps wirelessly from the electronic medical record. So this is a capability that's being added more and more, where the settings, the dosing information can be transmitted to a patient's infusion pump to reduce the potential for manual error entry. And then a nurse or a clinician, whoever is responsible, would go and double check the numbers and start the patient's infusion. Now, you might say, why not also allow the infusion to be started or stopped if you can push the settings? And the problem has to do with identity and ensuring that it's the right pump. Because if it's wireless, it could be anywhere. It could be anything, and it may not be the right pump associated with the right person, the right patient. Whereas if it's a wired, tethered device, it now reduces the likelihood that you'd be sending the information to the wrong pump. So I think it connects to some extent with what Martin is saying, with identity, access of devices in a system. It's not only knowing about that device, but knowing what it's associated with in a highly reliable way. That would be critical is essential for safety critical applications. So it's an extension, in a sense, I think, Martin, of what you're proposing. A little different, but builds on that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think you raised an excellent point. I'll tell you why, because I've been discussing this with identity and access management companies out there, right? We talk about human identities, but not machines, not devices. And one thing I've raised with them is, you know, with identity and access management, when will you apply it to devices or get into that area, which I think is something they should consider besides just us, right? And some of them have said they're looking into it, but I've heard nothing concrete or anything that's gratifying which says we are in that space. So that's an area which I think, and so everybody out there, if you can, you know, if we can have the medical supply, the OEMs out there getting that direction, because it'll be a dual thing. One is standard for device and how you're going to identify them, and then identification of companies like Octas of the world, I'm just throwing names out there, is who can basically put that into practice, right? So that's one thing which I think would help a lot, I think, in the future as we move in that direction. I don't know what you guys think about it.
And remember, there's the FDA Unique Device ID work, UDI, and the whole the website area and the law around that, which doesn't solve this problem very effectively yet, but can't be ignored when thinking about it. Right. It has to be considered.
Device identifier. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about trust, identifying device is a starting point. But there's a lot more that goes into trusting a device than just its identity. But yeah, first you have to be able to trust the identity, which means something that's not easily hackable or duplicated, so that you can detect a counterfeit device out there. And then you can get into figuring out what it takes to actually trust that device. And the trust may be more use case specific than than a kind of an absolute thing.
Right.
So you can trust that device in certain scenarios, but maybe you can't trust that device in other scenarios because it's not accurate enough, or quality is not high enough, or doesn't have the functionality you need to make it happen for you.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. I mean, yes, trust is definitely highly contextual, and definitely that you need to first do the integrity of the source and integrity of data. That's where this trust is, that you can trust the device or trust the identity of a source, but that this is that source who they're claiming to be, but their quality of information coming from that may be compromised or may not. Yeah, they're very complex issues. So I will say that trust is good, but control is better.
But again, and this is another area which I don't think we take it seriously enough, at least from my perspective, is baselining, is what is the truth out there. And if your baseline is false itself, then what do we do from there on is not going to be appropriate, right? Is whether it's workflow, whether it's how a specific device operates, right? You got to form a baseline. This is a behavior. When that behavior changes, right? How does that really change, or is it just false positives, etc., right? Or negatives? So somewhere we need to find a way, and how would that play into our devices and going forward, right? Would that be something that create? You know?
So Parthiv, I think we are also need to be mindful of time. I don't know when things are going to end.
I think we should wrap this off. Give people before we disconnect. Any other comments from anybody out there? If not, then we'll give you guys some time, a little bit of time back, so you can go and take a break, come back, and we'd like to thank everybody for participating in this session. I hope we got something out of it, which was worthwhile.
But
I know we did.
So are they coming back, right? Or what's yeah. So take a short bio break or relaxing break, and then please come back. Like 5 minutes, you're saying, right? Is it 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's 5.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, so Haley, when do we get back?
So we can come back at around 12:52 for the 5-minute break.
Great. So let's do that then. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you then.
So we need to wrap this by when?
So we actually have 15 more minutes in the breakout sessions, so we can wrap it up within that time frame.
Okay, so but within that 15 minutes, we also need to cover 2 other sections, right, Parthiv?
Yeah, so we've gone over, I believe, gaps in security and interoperability. So we can move on to discuss potential mitigation strategies and develop recommendations after the break.
Right.
Right.
It'll work out well. Yep.
Okay.
All right, so it is 12:52. So whenever you guys are ready, we can resume.
Okay. All right, so let's see. So we can get started, I guess. So in this next section that we're going to start is identifying and discussing potential mitigation strategies. We have talked about the issues, we have talked about the risks, we have talked about the gaps. Probably this is the time to talk about what do we know or understand about the mitigation strategies that we can have. So I can start the question. So we all state that you should never deviate from your incident response plan when it comes to responding to a cybersecurity incidents. So would you deviate from it if the incident was related to a medical device? Or would it be better to have a separate incident response plan for medical devices or Internet of Medical Things? What are your thoughts, please?
So I mean, for all of you who've been in that situation where breaches have occurred, where you have to respond to something that triggers an event, triggers an incident, and you could respond to it. We all form these incident response plans. We follow it to the T. That's the way we're going to do it. The question is really what we have as a general purpose incident response plan. Would that apply to medical devices? And by that I mean from everything from detect, analyze, remediate, recover, and lessons learned. And my feeling is medical devices different than other entities. And would you think that you need another way of addressing that instance related to medical device and deviate from the norm, or have a separate process or one that is catered specifically for medical devices? Because nobody talks about that out there. And NIST has controls, NIST talks about incident response, but nobody breaks it down saying for medical devices it'll be different. That's what the question is. That's what I'm trying to understand, or we are trying to understand. So would love to get your feedback. Anybody wants to take a shot at it?
So I'll give it a try.
Please.
So my thinking is medical devices are different, and it goes back to the risk file for that medical device. I would think that if there's an incident, immediately I would want to be notified, and so that I can do a risk analysis for that particular threat. And basically come up with new mitigations possibly.
Right, but that would be lessons learned, right? If it's a life and death situation, what would you do? Would you, if it's a patient's life is on the line, right? And you talk about remediating and recovering, you might not have an option if you follow a process from a recovery standpoint, right? What I'm saying is would you have recommendations that said that in this scenario, maybe it's a break the glass. You just throw every norm out of the window and say, this is what I'm going to do in these situations.
Yeah, I think the first thing would be to stop the treatment immediately. But other than that, the devices that I work on are not of that nature. They're not life-preserving devices. So I'm a little bit at a loss here.
No, I think you're on the right track. I mean, no, it's we're talking, we're discussing. So every input is important, and it's very useful. And you're right. And that, I think you just answered that the question I was raising is, does the one glove fit all, even when it comes to medical devices? And maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think it does, because there's different categories of medical devices. You know, like life-preserving medical devices. The key there would be to interrupt treatment immediately. However, if it's a life-preserving device, if you interrupt treatment, you can put the patient in jeopardy also.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I think break the glass policies, there has to be break the glass policies for every context, but they are all contextualized and has to be there.
right. Dr. Goldman, any thoughts you would like to share in this area?
I was double muted for extra security. I was away during the beginning of the conversation. I picked up the question of break the glass, which is a very important question. I fully agree. And we wrestle with that quite a bit. And we did some work a few years ago trying to codify some of the break the glass concepts. I think it was with Eugene Wasserman at I guess Kansas State University. I think before he went to, I can't remember where it was in his journey with the FDA. But that was a very hearty, maybe 1 year long discussion. I think as part of the UL standards work on for interoperability and security. How new it could become so nuanced, of course, in terms of break the glass. It's funny. One could argue about all the subtleties of break the glass, and if someone really has a concern with, let's say, with an infusion pump giving the wrong drug, if you're really worried, you walk over and you disconnect the tubing, or you like physically stop the process. In many cases, that's actually what you do clinically, is physically stop a process. So we can get kind of tangled up a lot in the discussions, but in reality, if you're really worried, you just physically, if appropriate, you interrupt the process. It's a tough problem.
Yeah, we have less than half a minute.
Yeah.
So the last one was develop recommendations, was something which, but I think the recommendations have been interwoven in our responses, I think. So I think we could extract that for the next session and use that, you know what I'm saying? Because we've gone back and forth from the points, you know what I'm saying? I mean, Mohd, what do you think?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Everybody to load. Okay. I think we have quite a few people here. Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed the breakout. It gave you some time to get into what I like to call very hands-on, very interactive. And now we're going to ask each of the groups. I don't know if you empowered your facilitator to be the one to report back, or you guys nominated someone in your group to share, but we're going to ask each of the groups to give about a 10-minute roundup of basically the 4 core points that we asked you guys to address, and basically share with everyone how it went and what you talked about, the recommendations, mitigation strategies, risks, wherever you focused on from the point of view. Just to share with everybody, as Florence mentioned, we had our student facilitators in each of the rooms, and they took great notes, and our goal is to share hopefully within the next week or two, the actual summary of all the sessions. We're going to share with all of you and also other registrants who may be coming on board to view this on demand. So definitely you will all have access to both verbal and some written form of what went on in each of these breakouts. So with that, I would like to have the nominated individual to talk about what happened in security and interoperability and connected healthcare session. We're going to